So estrogen affects everything. So why does estrogen matter for your entire body? It's not just a sex hormone, right? It's going to impact your brain. It's going to support memory and cognition. And when estrogen declines, that's why in our brain we start to notice things like brain fog, like anxiety, like depression. So today we're going to dive into estrogen, which is really the hormone that quietly ran the show in your entire adult life and suddenly decided to go off script in perimenopause and menopause. So many women should care about and want to care about because we are often trying to lose weight and feeling very stuck in this area. Estrogen plays a huge role here. When it declines, we start to notice more belly fat. It regulates our bone turnover. So when it declines, we see more bone loss. It impacts our gut by regulating our microbiome balance, and it impacts our vaginal and urinary tissue. And so declining of this means dryness, more UTIs, more discomfort. So hey there, sister. Welcome back to the Period Whisperer podcast. I am very happy you are here today with me. How are you feeling in your body? If you've been feeling like your body has suddenly switched to a version of iOS you didn't approve, and everything from your mood to your sleep to your waistline is glitching, this episode is your reset button. I wanted to spend January covering our sex hormones and really making sure you have a deeper understanding of what each of them are, what they do, what your options are as we navigate perimenopause into menopause, or if you are already postmenopausal. I think this is going to give you a good blueprint to know where you're at, where to go, and what to do with that, because we're all going to go through that at different times, right? If you've had a hysterectomy, even earlier on in your 40s, then you're going to be in a different place hormonally than some other people, perhaps. Or if you are finding you're struggling with symptoms, I want you to understand what those symptoms are at so that at least you're armed with the information, because knowledge is power, as we all know. So today we're going to dive into estrogen, which is really the hormone that quietly ran the show in your entire adult life and suddenly decided to go off script in perimenopause and menopause. And ultimately, it's her time to exit stage left, some of it anyway. I'm going to be pulling some wisdom from Dr. Marie Claire Haver and her brilliant book, The New Menopause, and of course, one of my favorite women to follow, who I think of as the OG in midlife, Dr. Christiane Northrup. And I'm going to bring it all together today through a functional lens, which is really the lens I use every day with my clients. So if you have had symptoms like, I don't know, let's see, anything from the typical perimenopause symptoms, right, that we're used to. If you felt confused, if you've been dismissed by doctors or told it's just aging or you're not there yet, if you're curious about hormone replacement therapy, but also nervous, this is the episode for you. But real quick, before we dive in, you are going to hear me say this over and over again throughout all of the episodes of The Period Whisperer, because although I'm not a black and white person, and if you are one of my clients, you probably know this, there's not a definite this, a definite that, except a few things. A few things I'll stand on the hill and die on and say we have to do this, because I do think we're all a little different. I'm never going to say you must do this or you must do that, but there are three things that I feel pretty strongly about after all of my years of experience working with women and their hormones, working with women and their health and their bodies, and optimizing this. So I want to run through those real quick so you have those quite upfront, and you'll hear me say it again and again. Number one, when you are exploring hormone replacement therapy, you want to work with a practitioner, your doctor, your naturopath, your functional health practitioner like myself. It's an art and a science, right? And it is a tool. I think about that. I talked a lot about peptide therapy in November. We will talk about peptides again on the show, but these are tools that we can use that can really benefit us. But we need support in understanding how these tools work and can be customized for us. So I feel very strongly this is not something we just willy-nilly do on our own, that we really want to have an expert help you. You're going to get better benefits that way. So this episode is not advice on what to do. I'm just sharing education and knowledge with you so that you can take it with you into your work with your practitioner. Number two, I do feel very strongly that you need to ensure your detoxification pathways are clear before we use hormone replacement therapy. I think fundamentally this is going to help you age better. It's going to help you feel better. In fact, it often rectifies a lot of issues that we have with our hormones and just helps you sleep better, have better energy, think more clearly, have more of a libido, all have better skin, have better hair, all of these things. So we want to always prioritize detoxification. And really the best way to know where you're at and how to move forward with that is going to be running a Dutch and or a GI map. I've talked a lot about these in December, so make sure you go back and listen to those episodes. But these labs in particular are really the only way that we can tell very clearly where we're at and where we need to go, and can really correlate with how we're feeling and be very motivating when we look at that in black and white. And number three, you have to do the underlying work, right? It doesn't matter what amazing tools you pick up of hormone replacement therapy or peptide therapy or supplements or whatever it is. If we are not eating for our body for optimization, if we are not moving our body for optimization, if our central nervous system is a totally whack and upside down and sideways, and we have not done the work to bring it into calm or at least create the habits, these tools can be super helpful to help us sleep, help us find time to move, help us regulate our nervous system. But it doesn't change the fact that we need to have the foundational habits in place of going to bed at a certain hour, waking up at a certain hour, having enough sleep in that time frame, holding space for it, right? Even if we can't sleep, the hormones might help us sleep, but we have to hold space for that sleep. Can't fix it if it's not a good habit, right? Same with nutrition. If you are not eating consistently for regulated blood sugar, if you're not eating enough of the right nutrients for your food, no hormone's going to fix that for you. If you are not functionally moving your body, or you're overworking out your body or underworking out your body, no hormone or peptide is going to fix that for you. And if your central nervous system is total chaos and you're not taking time to breathe, to relax, to bring yourself back into balance, to rupture, then no hormone or peptide or supplement is going to be able to fix that for you. You have to do that underlying foundational work. Okay. Now that I've said my piece, I will get off my soapbox and let's get into it. So, what exactly is estrogen? Before we talk about high estrogen, low estrogen, safe estrogen, unsafe symptoms, detox, hormone replacement therapy, you need to know that estrogen is not one hormone. And this is something I didn't know years ago. It's a family. There are actually three key estrogens in the female body. Number one is estradiol. And I think of estradiol kind of like the queen bee. It's also known as E2 if you see it on your labs. This is the estrogen that really keeps everything running very smoothly. Mood, libido, confidence, metabolism, insulin sensitivity, muscle and bone strength, the health of your brain and heart, vaginal moisture, skin elasticity. Estradiol is your main estrogen during your reproductive years. So when women say, I just don't feel like myself anymore, it's often because E2 has started fluctuating or dropping. The second estrogen is E1 or estrone. And I think of this one like your backup generator, right? It becomes the dominant estrogen in menopause. It's made primarily in your fat cells, which is why. So why does estrogen matter for your entire body? It's not just a sex hormone, right? It's a master regulator. It's going to impact your brain by increasing neurotransmitters like our serotonin and our dopamine, our very calm, happy, good feeling hormones. It's going to support memory and cognition, focus, and neuroplasticity. And when estrogen declines, that's why in our brain, we start to notice things like brain fog, like anxiety, like depression. It impacts our heart and blood vessels. So it's very anti-inflammatory. It improves cholesterol. It helps blood vessels expand. And of course, when it declines, we have a higher cardiovascular risk, which is a problem. In our muscle and metabolism, it improves insulin sensitivity. This is one that I think so many women should care about and want to care about because we are often trying to lose weight and feeling very stuck in this area. It's going to help build and maintain our muscle. We often think of testosterone for this, but estrogen plays a huge role here. When it declines because of these things, we start to notice more insulin resistance and more belly fat specifically. It impacts our bones, right? It regulates our bone turnover. So when it declines, we see more bone loss. It impacts our gut. by regulating our microbiome balance. So it's going to influence the estrobolome, the gut's estrogen recycling system. And it impacts our vaginal and urinary tissue, right? Moisture, elasticity, microbiome. And so declining of this means dryness, more UTIs, more discomfort. So estrogen affects everything. Many women gain weight, and your body is trying to produce estrogen any way that it can. So, too much estrone, especially if your detoxification pathways are sluggish, can lead to things like estrogen dominant symptoms, fibroids, heavy bleeding, breast tenderness, things like that. And then the third estrogen, E3 estriol, is I think of as the gentle protector. It's often used in vaginal estrogen therapy because it's very mild. It supports vaginal and urinary tissue. It has anti-proliferative effects, meaning it doesn't stimulate cancer risk. And understanding, I think, these three estrogens helps you understand your symptoms, your Dutch results, which I really feel like you should have a Dutch test done, your hormone replacement therapy options if you need that, and why some women do well on certain therapies and not others. So let's talk about estrogen through perimenopause into menopause. So the story of estrogen, of course, as we know, is not a linear decline. It's not like all of a sudden, the ovaries are going to retire and they're going to go out quite gently into the good night, right? It's more like a toddler with a marker, unpredictable, messy, dramatic. And in perimenopause, it's kind of like a roller coaster, right? Estrogen doesn't just go down, it kind of goes wild, right? It can be high one cycle, it can be low the next, it can be non existent in the next, it can go through the roof in the next. This is why symptoms can be inconsistent. And of course, low progesterone, which we'll talk about in the coming calls here. And so make sure you're coming back to the podcast from anovulatory cycles, make these swings hit even harder in our symptoms. Once we achieve menopause, it's more like a flat line, right? Once you hit menopause, which is really defined as 12 months without a period, estradiol, right, the queen bee drops dramatically and our backup generator, estrone, becomes more primary. This is why so many women begin experiencing things like brain fog, belly fat, joint pain, vaginal dryness, sleep challenges, even after your periods stop. This isn't aging, this is estrogen. So let's talk a little bit about what signs and symptoms of low estrogen look like, because this can happen at any age. And now, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm willing to bet you're over 35. So although it can certainly happen before that, for sure, we're going to talk about around these showing up later in perimenopause or after menopause. So that can look more like hot flashes or night sweats. It can look like vaginal dryness and painful sex, increased UTIs or urinary urgency. It can look like anxiety or irritability, depression or low motivation. I also think of estradiol almost as our rose-colored glasses hormone. It really helps things like feel really lovely in our life, puts a different lens on things for us. This is when we can start to notice sleep disruptions, particularly very early morning waking from low estrogen, brain fog and memory lapses, joint pain, loss of muscle or increased fat, dry skin, reduced collagen, bone density changes, low libido. And these are not necessarily normal aging things. They're hormonal messages from your body saying, hey, this is not where it should be. This is not enough for me. And that's when we can look at what our options are. But let's talk first about signs and symptoms of high estrogen, because I see this a lot in my clients. It's often seen early to mid perimenopause, right? When we're that roller coaster, but I still see it later in perimenopause when we're not detoxing properly. I even see this postmenopausal because we can have low estrogen production and still have estrogen dominant, high estrogen symptoms if we're not detoxing properly. But some signs that you might notice of high estrogen in perimenopause are going to be things like heavy, clotty periods, breast tenderness, bloating, mood swings, weight fluctuations, fibroids, PMS that feels nuclear, right? You really just feel like a different person all the time, migraines. And again, here's that catch that I just mentioned, but high estrogen symptoms don't have to mean you have too much estrogen. Often you can have estrogen accumulation due to poor detoxification. And that is where functional testing becomes gold because we can't test that in blood work, right? The doctors can't check that for you in blood work. We can only look at detoxification when we are doing functional labs like a GI map, functional labs like a Dutch test, right? That's when we can really check those things and why I find them so valuable and why my clients get results because we find these answers. And again, this is why hormone testing like the Dutch is so valuable. Because again, we can have low estrogen production, but symptoms of estrogen dominance because it's circulating in your fat, staying in your body, circulating around there, putting more stress on your body, giving you these symptoms if you're not detoxing properly. And again, the Dutch will look at all of your estrogens, where commonly in blood work, we won't look at that. And it will also look at your detoxification pathways to give you kind of a customized plan of action to optimize your health and hormones. This is where I say to you and shamelessly plug if you have not run a Dutch, if you have not run a GI map, if you are feeling stuck, I really want you to swipe up and book a free call. Let's talk about whether this would make sense for you, whether this would be beneficial for you, because this is where progress happens when we see what's going on in our own body and we no longer ignore it or just try random things that we hear on the internet. Okay. So now that we know what our estrogens are, how they impact the body, why they're important, and that they do in fact get a bit wiggity and then decline in perimenopause to menopause, I think it's important to talk about estrogen replacement therapy or hormone replacement therapy, right? We hear hormone replacement therapy, we hear it called HRT or BHRT, which is bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. The big difference there, and I'll talk about it again, but bioidentical means it is created in a way that your body recognizes it. So it's made exactly like the hormones our own body makes. So our body knows it, recognizes it, knows what to do with it, knows how to use it and lose it. Versus synthetic is going to be from something else. Like historically, something called Premarin is used, and that is literally from mare's urine. So it is hormones from that is not genetically the same as a bioidentical. So it's not identical to what our body knows. Our body's got to figure out what to do with it. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. So there are several ways to replace estrogen safely and effectively if you truly understand where all of your estrogen levels are and how they are detoxing. Remember, that is my caveat. You're going to hear me say over and over again. And I feel very strongly that we should do that. I would never take bioidentical hormone replacement therapy or recommend it to my clients or any one of my family members without testing first. That is certainly how strongly I feel about it. So there is transdermal estrogen or estradiol specifically, right? Because that's the one that's really declining for us, that queen bee. And it can come in patches, it can come in gels, it can come in sprays. So transdermal means on the skin, going through our derma, right? Our skins. It is really the safest for heart and clotting risk. It bypasses the liver, which means it gets to us more easily without putting stress on the liver. It provides steady dosing. And really, transdermal estradiol is the gold standard recommended by most modern menopause experts. Then there is oral estradiol. This is less ideal due to the liver impact, right? Anytime we take a pill or a medication, it's going to impact the liver, and our gut also has to break it down. It can also raise clotting risks. It's still used in some cases, but it's no longer the first line. It's no longer as common as it used to be. And then we have local estrogen, so vaginal typically. You can actually use estrogen creams on your face as well. So we think about local. These are creams, tablets, rings, primarily estradiol or low dose estradiol. Extremely safe. They do not significantly enter the bloodstream, and they're really great and beneficial for dryness, for UTIs, for painful sex, or again, it can be used even on your face. If you feel like your face is aging really rapidly and your estrogen is low, that can be a beneficial thing. We see it in certain serums or face creams and things that can come on. So remember, there's bioidentical and then there's synthetic. Typically, when we are using estrogen, we're going to want to balance it out with progesterone. In fact, some would say you must take progesterone if you're taking systemic estrogen and still have a uterus, right? We want to balance this out with, because our estrogen and progesterone, they're symbiotic, they work together. So we want to keep those balanced. That's what's going to help us feel most optimized in our body. So again, there's bioidentical progesterone or there's synthetic progestins. And I do find that, again, bioidentical is going to be the most natural. It's going to help the most with sleep, support mood, and lower breast cancer risk than any synthetic versions. So there is something that I think can be really helpful to better understand when it comes to hormone replacement therapy. There's continuous hormone replacement therapy, or there's sequential hormone replacement therapy. Sequential hormone replacement therapy considers the fact that we do have a rhythm to our hormones, right? And we know that our estrogen rises and falls through 28 days. We know that our progesterone rises and falls through those 28 days. So if you are wanting to optimize, a lot of people are using a more sequential plan or sequential strategy with their hormone replacement therapy, where they're taking their estrogen pretty much every day, perhaps different doses of it to kind of mimic what we would experience in our body. But then they use progesterone for part of the cycle, usually, days 12 and beyond, or 14 and beyond. Like progesterone typically shows up around ovulation, or does show up, not typically, shows up around ovulation. And then we get that rise of it, and then it kind of falls again down by menstruation. So it mimics a menstrual cycle when we're doing sequential hormone replacement therapy. And it is often used for women in perimenopause or who are still in perimenopause, right? If we're still having a cycle, because you're likely going to be still bleeding when you're following this kind of pattern. Now, continuous combined HRT is when you're going to use your estrogen and your progesterone every single day. And this is more commonly used once you've achieved menopause, right? So there's not going to be a withdrawal bleed. You'll have a bit more stable mood for many women. And again, which is better? It really is going to depend on whether you are in menopause or whether you are in perimenopause. It's going to depend on your family history, your bleeding patterns, your personal symptom response to being on hormone replacement therapy, because everyone is different. And again, this is why I think it's really important to work with a practitioner so that you have someone to talk to you about, is this normal? Is this not normal? What can I do about it if it's not working for me? And where we can really, take a good look at your Dutch results as well. And of course, your progesterone tolerance. For some people, taking progesterone during the first 2 weeks of your cycle, when you normally wouldn't have progesterone, it can make you feel kind of sluggish and kind of yuck, instead of feeling calm and lovely when we want to be feeling our progesterone. But again, sequential is often more smoother for women in perimenopause, and continuous is often more stable for postmenopause. But this is really where that individualized medicine truly matters. So I think it's really important to talk about, is estrogen therapy safe, right? Let's clear the fear here. Thanks to a decade-old data from the WHI, or the World Health Initiative, I think done back in the 80s, many women still fear hormone replacement therapy. But here's what we now know. Transdermal, right, the skin, the gels, the patches, the creams, estradiol, and micronized bioidentical progesterone have a very low risk profile for most women. Again, if you want to see where your risk might be, that's where running a Dutch can be super helpful, because what we're learning is that when we start earlier on hormone replacement therapy in perimenopause or in this menopause transition, it actually has better outcomes for us. And risk is really going to depend on personal history, right? Family history, on how your estrogen is delivered, like what form you're taking, what form of progesterone is paired with it, and of course your detoxification capacity. This right here, this detox capacity, is why I feel very strongly about running a Dutch and a GI map, because we're going to see in there, how is your detox capacity? And then can we clear that detox so that it is safer for you to be taking things, even though we do know now it is much safer. I think in Dr. Marie Claire Haver's book, The New Menopause, she calls it informed, empowered decision making. And I think she's right. Women deserve the current science, not the outdated fear. So there's a lot of great benefit we are now seeing to hormone replacement therapy, especially starting earlier than rather than later. Now, as a practitioner, as a functional health practitioner and a non prescribing practitioner, I work a lot with my clients, doctors, and naturopaths and NPs to help them feel their best, right? I like to work alongside who your team of health support is going to be. And I have known over the years a lot of clients who could really benefit from hormone replacement therapy be very dismissed by their doctors. So, how do you talk to your doctor about it? So let's say we've done your Dutch, you know your detox pathways are clear, we know your estrogen is low, for example. How do we talk to our own doctor about these things? And I think it comes down to, again, like anything else, bringing questions and preparation to the table. So, some really great questions I find to bring to your doctor's appointment. And this is where you might want to take some notes or make a note at the time of this podcast recording so you can come back to it. But something like, can we discuss my symptoms as potential signs of low estrogen? Are you familiar with transdermal estradiol? What types of HRT do you prescribe and why? Right? Help start getting that conversation going. Do you use sequential or continuous therapy? And how do you decide? How will we determine dosing and follow up? I really feel like this is so important because, again, it is an art. And what we're trying to do here is use these tools to help you feel better. And if we only have an appointment once every 6 months or once a year, how are we going to really watch the analytics to know if this is working for you in an ideal, optimized way or not? We want to have consistency in our check ins when we're taking and using tools like this, just like you would with any medication, right? If you find that you are dismissed, maybe your doctor's like, oh, you're not ready for that yet. Oh, your other levels aren't there yet. You're not there. We're not doing it. I think you can certainly say things, or some things I found very helpful for my clients is to say, my quality of life really matters. I'm looking for a collaborative approach here. Or if HRT isn't in your scope, can you refer me to someone who specializes in menopause care? Or I'm not here for medication, I'm here for information. And if they still shut you down, again, if we know, if we're empowered with our Dutch that shows, the low hormones, which again, your doctor will not necessarily know and understand or trust the Dutch. But if we know that your hormones are low and your detox is clear and you're doing those foundational pieces and you still get shut down from your practitioner, I think it's time to find a new provider because you really do deserve support. And there are some amazing menopause experts out there that can really help specifically with hormone replacement therapy. Here's my reminder. You're going to hear it again and again because it's that important to me. Before you start hormone replacement therapy, you must make sure your detoxification of estrogen is going. This is where I see so many women struggle, not because HRT is wrong, but because their detox pathways are not prepared properly. Estrogen doesn't stay in your body. It must be broken down and eliminated. So through our liver, down to our gut, out of our gut, into our stool. If detox pathways are sluggish, you recirculate estrogen. This leads to symptoms that we all do not want, right? All those high estrogen symptoms, and certainly stuck weight and brain fog and poor sleep, and all the things that we think of when we think of perimenopause. And it also leads to potential long-term risks. A Dutch test is going to show your phase one estrogen metabolism, right? Which pathway your estrogen is going down. We need to make sure most of it is going down the most protective pathway. It is going to show phase two methylation. Can your body neutralize estrogen so that it can be excreted out of our body, or is it getting recirculated up there? It's also going to show your progesterone and your androgen balance, right? Our hormones are messengers and they all work and talk to each other. So those are going to matter in this picture. And it's going to show your cortisol pattern that affects everything in perimenopause. I cannot say this enough, but 9 out of 10 of my clients that come to me because they're in perimenopause and they want to feel better don't have a sex hormone production issue. There's other issues that are impacting the sex hormones. So we got to do that root cause work first. And then often we don't even need hormone replacement therapy. A GI map, on the other hand, which is another amazing way to figure out how we're detoxing, tests something called beta glucuronidase, which is the enzyme that causes estrogen recirculation. It is a huge indicator. This one was very elevated for me when I did my first GI map, which meant my liver was congested and I was recirculating estrogen. So even though my estrogen was actually looking a bit low, I was experiencing estrogen dominant symptoms. So we have to bring this down and work on this. It's also going to show your dysbiosis, your inflammation, any hormonal gut imbalances, right? And hormone replacement therapy on a body that cannot detox is going to equal more symptoms, more weight gain, more breast tenderness, more mood swings, everything we do not want. But hormone replacement therapy on a clear detox system can feel like magic, right? We're just using the tools the way we should be. Okay, sister, that was a lot of information for you about estrogen. I want to give you some clear to dos. What can you do this week with your nutrition? I think these are some standard amazing things that you can do for yourself. Make sure you're having a cup of cruciferous vegetables daily. That's your broccoli, your cauliflower, your Brussels sprouts, your cabbage, things, those, real cruciferous vegetables, those really help the detoxification of estrogen, which is amazing. One of my favorite things to do, especially, if you don't love vegetables, which I have some clients that don't love their vegetables, is to make a shake every day and put a cup of frozen cauliflower rice in there. You will not taste it. It will make it nice and frothy like a milkshake or a smoothie. And you are going to be getting in that great cruciferous vegetables to help detox your estrogen. You want to prioritize 25 to 45 grams of fiber per day. I really recommend grabbing a little macronutrient and micronutrient app like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer, get the free version and track what your macronutrients are and what your fiber is so that you know, because you want to be aiming for 25 to 45 grams of fiber. That is significantly going to help your detox pathways. Of course, we want to make sure we have a good amount of protein at every single meal, that you're having mineral rich hydration, right? That's where I'm going to totally plug the Beam Minerals. If we haven't talked about Beam Minerals, these are my new absolute obsession. You can go to beamminerals.com. They're giving 20% off to my podcast listeners if you use the discount code BRIA at checkout. Your Beam Minerals are going to make sure that you have the base amount of minerals that we can no longer get from our filtered water and our, over farmed soil. So it's a really simple way to get minerals in every single day. They only taste like water, to make sure, and that alone can make you feel significantly better. Try it for 30 days. Limiting alcohol, of course. I don't think we need to talk too much about that. I feel like everyone knows this. Balancing your blood sugar. Again, waking up, eating within 2 hours of waking in the morning, eating enough protein, fats, and carbohydrates together to keep you full and satisfied for 4 to 5 hours. Repeat at lunch, repeat at dinner. So that's nutritionally what you can be doing. Supplement wise, and although I'm going to tell you right here, I'm not a fan of recommending supplements without testing first. If you test and you have really elevated estrogen, that's where something like DIM can come in and be very beneficial. Something like calcium deglucarate. Calcium deglucarate is very helpful if we are not metabolizing or not detoxing our estrogen down the right pathway as well. Omega-3s are very helpful for this, for inflammation in the body, and methylated B vitamins. These are all things that can be really supported, but this is just general guidance. We still need to know for you and your body what's ideal. But if you have them hanging around the house, you can give them a whirl. Lifestyle wise, of course, as long as your adrenals are in good working order, and surprise, surprise, the Dutch is going to tell us that about you. Strength training, of course, gold standard, right? We want to be putting on that lean muscle so that we're producing our own hormones and protecting our body. Having evening wind down routines, making sure you're having a good sleep hygiene at night, stress resilience practices, right? There's that breath work, that meditation, that yoga, that walking, that rupturing that I've talked about so many times on the podcast, but screaming in the shower, into a pillow, in your car, singing at the top of your lungs, having a good laugh time. That stuff helps really regulate and create more stress resiliency in us. Sunlight exposure, which is harder in the winter time, but getting that sunlight in your eyes, especially first thing in the day, And again, just any joy, any pleasure, any creativity, any connection, anything that brings you purpose, these things make a huge difference. We don't think they do, but they do. And if you're not doing these things, it's probably the thing that you need to do. And of course, functional testing. If your hormone style is unique, right? Where your hormones are at today has everything to do with your genetics, your lifestyle, everything that has happened to you up until this day that you're listening to this podcast right now. So, doing a GI map combo, this will change your entire path. Okay, we want to make sure that we are really looking at what works for us. So if you have not done those already, or if you've done them and you didn't get them explained to you properly, I really want you to swipe up, book a free call with me. I will take a look at them if you've already had them done, or we will talk about how to help you and make sure you are in the best position to use the tools that can take you from an 8 to a 10 later in your life. Remember, you are not broken. You are not crazy. You are not just aging. You are transitioning through one of the most powerful phases of womanhood, and you deserve support and clarity and options. Estrogen is a messenger for you. And once you understand the message, things become a lot clearer. You're the CEO of your own life and your body, and you get to choose how that next chapter feels. So I want you to take action today. I want you to take one note out of this podcast and take one action, whether that is writing down the questions to talk to your healthcare practitioner, whether that is changing some things in your nutrition, whether that is booking a call so we can actually get to work on these things, especially if you are someone who is too busy to do this stuff for yourself. That is what I am here for. But do one thing and go out, be more in your life and not just less on a scale. And we'll catch you in the next episode.